Good afternoon, sir. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we bring up onto screen poll 000579991, please? We're now into June 2012, and you'll see at the bottom there's an email from yourself to Angela van der Bogard. It may assist if we actually start on the page after, which is an email that's been forwarded. That is an email from Chris Darville, who is in legal services, to Angela van der Bogard about MPs' visits. It seems as though members of Parliament's visit. And he says, Angela, I've compared the list of branches against the known cases being fronted by shoesmiths. 3 of the 5 cases formally notified to the Post Office fall within the constituents of one of the 37 MPs due to attend the meeting. And it gives some names there. I have set out a summary of the facts below. I've taken some of this information from letters prepared by shoesmiths, but have not yet had an opportunity to verify it. And the first case there is a case of Scott Darlington. And it says, for example, letter before action sent by shoesmiths on the 16th of August 2011. It is alleged by the sub-postmaster that he was compelled to make the false declarations by virtue of economic duress, and that the offences resulted from the unfairness of the system devised for use by sub-postmasters and or as a result of errors generated by the Horizon system itself. As a result, the sub-postmaster claims that the Post Office was not entitled to terminate his appointment, and consequently the Post Office is liable for the wrongful termination of his contract. And it says below that, it's alleged that A, the training provided was inadequate, B, the helpline provided by the Post Office was unfairly difficult to access due to both its hours of operation and the insufficiency of operators to deal with the level of demand placed on the service. C, the Horizon system suffers with inherent defects and or an unfair system of operation. And D, the standard operating procedures used by the Post Office make it impossible to properly reconcile errors. If we go over the page, to page 1, and the second of those emails, we have yourself emailing Angela van der Bogard about the Scott Darlington case, and you say, this is one of our top 5 cases that I've recommended that we proceed on, but I'm awaiting a risk analysis and cost estimate from Bond Pierce on the top 5 cases. Can you assist us, when you refer to top 5 cases, what did you mean by that?
I think potentially in value of debt. I don't know.
You're awaiting risk analysis. Can you recall who was carrying out the risk analysis and what kind of a process that was?
I think that was the Emily Springford page that you had up previously.
So the pros and the cons.
Yeah, Susan Crouchton had asked for a risk analysis to be done.
And can you assist us with why, on the 7th of June 2012, you would be in contact with Angela van der Bogard discussing these issues?
She would have asked me for some information on the cases, I would imagine.
And what do you recall of her involvement with these kinds of issues?
She was majorly involved in the MP cases, the mediation, and with our internal solicitors.
And at this time, what did you understand her views to be on the Horizon system and its integrity or its robustness?
I believe she conveyed that it was a robust system.
So where we have those pros and the cons that we were looking at before lunch, and there were some risks identified, including risk of systemic problems coming to light, such as training or support failures. Those were things that both you and she was aware of at this time, because that document was dated the 20th of December 2011.
Yeah.
The allegations being raised by Mr. Darlington, for example, include allegations about training being inadequate. Do you remember any conversation about Mr. Darlington's case about how some of those factors might actually chime with the risks that have been identified?
No, I can't remember unfortunately, I can't remember the specifics around that, or in seeing the document that you had up previously. Did I see that? I don't know.
And if we scroll up, we have it forwarded, or an email from Angela van der Bogard to Alwyn Lyons. Can you remind us who Alwyn Lyons was?
Company secretary, I think.
And do you recall from this period what his views on the integrity of Horizon was?
It's a her.
Sorry.
Both Susan Crichton and Alwyn Lyons came to visit Chesterfield to discuss debt recovery and see the operation in FSC. So I don't know what her involvement was within the MP's visit, so I can't answer that. But she saw the cases that we'd got and we discussed them.
Can we look
just on the basis that we'd got a level of debt.
Can we look at poll 00107907, please? And starting on the second page. It's the bottom of page 1, sorry, top of page 2. In fact, actually, we can start at the bottom of page. The bottom email there, sorry, if we could scroll down, from Michelle Stevens, you're copied in. Dear all, please see details from a former agent who has already pleaded guilty and has been sentenced to 12 months community order, but is now claiming Horizon. I intend to follow my debt recovery process and proceed with chasing our debt unless otherwise instructed. That's April 2013. We have an answer there above from Roderick Williams that you're copied into. And he says, we need to consider how this impacts on the investigation into the Horizon system and what we have said we would do about pursuing recoveries while that investigation is ongoing. So am I right in saying that in April, or by April 2013, there was a pause in certain cases on recoveries?
Yeah, I think as instructed by either Roderick Williams or other parts of the business, the mediation cases, I think they were pre this. But if any challenges had come in, then we were asked to put, if we were holding debt, to put it on hold.
Can we look at poll 00086707, please? Where it refers to investigation in that document we've just seen, is that the second site investigation?
Yeah, and wherever a claim had been raised, the Shoesmiths, the JFSA, if the debt was flagged as blocked due to Horizon issues raised. So if anybody told us to block the debt because of X, then that's what we would do.
If we scroll down on this page, we have an email from yourself to Roderick Williams, Simon Baker, Andrew Wynne, Rod Ismay. I've been reviewing the cases we have that state Horizon issues / pending the second site review, but there appears to be gaps on what we have and what cases have been progressed. I'm assuming we need to keep these cases on hold, but could you please advise? And then you receive a response from Roderick above that says, I suspect there'll be a number of sub-postmasters, current or former, who have raised Horizon issues directly with the JFSA / second site and would not necessarily be known to us. Simon, can we please ask second site for a list of everyone who submitted an issue to them under raising concerns with Horizon agreement we signed with them and the JFSA. We will need to ensure we comply with our obligations under that agreement, specifically that we don't start taking action against an individual who has raised a concern until the investigation has been completed. And if we scroll down the page and over to the next, we have there the list of cases that you had. So over to the next page. But I think to summarise this chain, it's that you didn't necessarily have the comprehensive list, because it may be that some people complained to Second Sight rather than to the post office.
Yeah, and I think that was our biggest concern, that we may be chasing debt where concerns had been raised, but we had not been made aware of it in FSC. So we couldn't block a debt, well, we didn't block a debt being chased if we didn't know there was issues being raised.
At this stage, so we have people who are making proactive complaints about the Horizon system that are notified on this spreadsheet, or ones that have complained to Second Sight. What happens if in a new case, so where a sub-postmaster complains, they're being pursued for recovery, and they say, I simply don't know why the figures say that they say what they say. I can't explain it. Did you feel any duty on yourselves to notify them that there were these cases that were raising issues with Horizon?
If they told us that they thought it was an Horizon issue, then we flagged it back into legal.
So where somebody said to you, I have a problem, I know it's caused by a software issue, that would be entered onto this spreadsheet?
If they said it was an Horizon issue, yes.
And if they couldn't explain what the issue was, but knew that they hadn't been the cause, did you see any duty on the post office to alert them to this mounting body of complaints about the Horizon system?
I didn't at the time, no.
Later that year, that can come down, thank you, October 2013, there was something called the Detica report. Is that a report that you were aware of at all?
No, because I believe it was around the work undertaken by what used to be the fraud and conformance team, and they moved out of my area into security in 2012. So I think the report was commissioned by Sally Smith in the security team, but I've not seen it until you sent it to me.
And it's not something that was ever summarised to you or brought to your attention? No. Can we please turn to poll 000222296? We're here in January 2015 now, so quite a significant time has passed. This is a meeting at Bond Dickinson, or with Bond Dickinson. And the matter is Horizon Challenges General. You are listed there as one of the attendees, if we could scroll down. So we have there Second Sight, some senior members of the Post Office, including Angela van der Bogard, for example, and General Counsel Chris Weijard. Why were you attending that meeting? Do you remember?
I don't know. No, I don't know why I was. I think probably to brief us on where they were with Second Sight or what was happening.
It's a relatively small list of attendees. Does that indicate that you were seen as particularly significant in respect of Horizon issues, or are we to read something else into that?
I think possibly it was just around the debt that I was holding and knowing what we were, how we were commencing. If there anything out of this that said we're not going to chase sub-postmasters, then I attended. But I can't remember. I can't remember attending it, but I can, vaguely remember the meeting. But I don't know. Oh, it's only from the notes that you've sent me.
So in that case, I'll go through it quite quickly. And I'll only read the first two bullet points. Chris Weijard explained that this was a working meeting and that the scheme was designed to resolve the complaints of sub-postmasters. Second Sight have a role in reviewing the complaints in the scheme. The role of Second Sight is well defined and constrained as the terms of their reference. Due to the wide range of questions raised by Second Sight, Chris sent his recent letter. The concern is that the wide-ranging questions asked by Second Sight would put the Post Office in the position of dealing with the information in a non-compliant way, and also that they did not relate to any specific cases. The Post Office expected focus questions relevant to specific cases from Second Sight to be able to assist with the mediation process and to be able to finalise the Part 2 report. The applicant's concerns would be with their specific cases and not how something is generally handed across the whole network. And then IH is Ian Henderson of Second Sight. He disagreed with the characterisation of Second Sight's role and based on the introduction, did not see the point of the meeting going ahead. Second Sight is an independent reviewer and that it was clear that the Post Office was treating this as if it was litigation. Is this a meeting that you recall at all? I mean, they're quite strong words used there. Is it not something that sticks in your memory at all?
It doesn't, no, I'm sorry.
Do you recall at all the relationship between the Post Office and Second Sight?
No. I can remember answering questions to Second Sight, but I think at that stage I was part of a team of 5 senior managers within FSC. So dealing from the debt point of view, I could answer questions on that, but not necessarily on every part of the work undertaken in the Finance Service Centre.
Some of the topics that we've dealt with already today, and we started with Castleton, Misra. We've looked at various spreadsheets of complaints by people raised about the Horizon system. We've seen references to the Post Office not wanting publicity about Horizon. We've seen that you were aware of the receipts and payments mismatch. Do you have any views, or did you have any views, as at 2015, about the way that Second Sight were being treated at this meeting or during this period? Or is that something you simply don't remember?
I don't, because I didn't have a lot of input with Second Sight. I think it was more Rod that was fronting up some of the responses that were happening to Second Sight rather than myself.
Can we look at poll 00117439, please? 26th of June 2015, there is a message that's communicated to a large number of people by Mark Davies, the Communications and Corporate Affairs Director at the Post Office. You are listed there. I mean, it may just, I think it's just because your name begins with an A that you're near the top. But you are one of the first recipients named there in this communication. If we could scroll down, please. Thank you. If we could go over the page. She says, Mark Davis says, thanks for taking part in the conference call on Horizon this week. This note went out yesterday and I wanted to make sure you received it. And if we look down at the note, there was a note from the communications team. It seems to be a global communication of some sort within the company. I'll just read you a few extracts from it. He says, hello, as I think most colleagues are aware, we're facing further media and parliamentary scrutiny about the Horizon system and allegations about how we have handled a small number of cases where losses have been identified in branches. If we scroll down, he says there, for example, I've held teleconferences over the last couple of days to update colleagues across the business on this new activity in relation to this issue. I'm really grateful to all those who took part and asked questions. But by the look of the distribution list, you did take part in some sort of teleconference. Is that right? Do you recall a teleconference?
Yeah, I think it was to all senior managers within the business by the looks of it.
A key request. Pardon? Sorry.
It was key. It was business-wide that this communication came out and the teleconference happened.
A key request was for a short script for use in response to questions from customers, postmasters, potential new operators, stakeholders, and others. Do you know who that request came from?
I don't know, no.
I mean, were you looking for answers at this stage to give to people?
I think we raised it on how do we respond if there's things happening in the press or on TV, and postmasters raise it with us. So we did ask that question. I can remember asking that question. And I think particularly I asked it to our legal team, to Roderick Williams, to say, well, how do we respond if a postmaster says it's Horizon?
And if we continue down the page, there are some bullet points that he gives are the key points to make. He says, extremely serious, untrue allegations about the post office and the Horizon system have continued to be repeated over the past few years by a small number of mainly former postmasters. The clear evidence we have in these cases does not support the allegations being made. We see there the other answers, the other proposed key points. If we scroll down, there's another one that I will read out, and that's the third one down. It says, if there were systemic problems with branch accounting, it is reasonable to expect them to have been more widely experienced across the post office network than the 136 individual complainants spanning more than 10 years, during which there have been 500,000 Horizon users. Were these points ones that were generally accepted by you and your colleagues?
I think they were, yes. I think this came through to be briefed out to our teams.
And if I can take you back to your discussion even later, 2018, with Womble Bond Dickinson, can we go back to poll 00006650? Page 34, about halfway down. There's comment there about entrusting postmasters with a lot of the post office's cash and stock. And your answer there is, yep, there's nothing more tempting, you see a new pair of shoes or a bill needs paying. Was that the kind of attitude that was taken at the post office at that time, that it wasn't Horizon, it was people who wanted new pairs of shoes or who had bills that needed paying?
Yeah, I think that was a very unfortunate comment that I made, if I'm quite honest, reading it myself now. There were defendants or there were cases where people admitted that they'd not got the children's dinner money, or they'd not got, financially they were in a dire situation. And yes, they had taken the money. So not all around Horizon, where other losses were there. Likewise, there were some branches that we lost some large amounts from for the processes that they were able to get round with Horizon.
This inquiry is looking at the culture within the post office at the relevant times. And here we are, 2018, with those kinds of comments being made. We have those lines to take in 2015. Where do you place responsibility for that culture having developed?
Potentially, yes. It on the comments that were made there, then it come from me. I'd take responsibility for that. I think from a business point of view, the opinion was that Horizon was correct. I appreciate that any system can have flaws or issues with it, and I don't think we ever saw it as bugs and defects, but I think that there's an accountability on Fujitsu to have reported it through to us, to have understood what the issues were that were being raised. And I think that's where my concern is, or my concern was. So you're continuing totally naive that there are issues because you don't hear about them.
I'm going to ask you a few miscellaneous topics. It won't be very long, no more than 10 minutes on just a few different topics. The first is the MBSC and scripts, and I'd like to return back to the Womble Bond Dickinson meeting, so poll 00006650. And it's page 8. Thank you. It's the bottom of page 8 and over the page 9. You say that if there were, we work with the MBSC, so if things like scripting, we're checking, or teams will check on what scriptings they've got on their products to try to ensure we're giving right advice out. And then she says, sorry, if somebody rang NBSC and it was something that related to your area, you would have had a role in checking the answers were, and you say, we try to. So since we've come to work in Chesterfield, I think we've tried to marry up a lot more than probably when they were at Dern. So we have done some exercises on looking at different scripts. You know, we're giving right advice out, and equally they will come to us for advice. If they've got a customer on and they want a refund or something, or we can see anything, so we can look at different systems to see transactions that have gone through. Were you aware of any policy or specific script that concerned issues with Horizon?
No, because it's not a product. The scripts that we were talking about were the MBSC helpline scripts that were specific to, say, the lottery or the ATMs or personal banking items. It was around a product.
And to the best of your recollection, did any of those scripts address situations where postmasters raised issues with software issues?
I don't know. I think you'd have to direct that at Kendra in the MBSC.
Thank you.
To say what was our knowledge base.
Thank you. The next topic, that we can stay with this document, is a different page that I'm going to take you to. It's page 18. This is the issue, we've discussed credence, but I want to ask you also about ARQ data. At page 18, it's at the top, you say, so we've also got access to like your credence information, so we can see it by transaction. But what they are wanting to know is, are we going to give them some money back? You know, if they have panicked all night because they don't balance, as long as we have interface, the client file might be full, we could see whether they are open on their account. And then you're asked, what's credence? And you say, this gives us where Pulse app gives you a summary. So that day you have done that many transactions. You could basically, in credence, you could see every customer's session, so you could see what they've done within that session. Were you aware that credence didn't show the full picture of everything tracked that, for example, the Horizon audit trail that's held with Fujitsu?
I subsequently have from watching this, but I didn't know before.
Were you aware that there were different types of audit trails that might be obtainable from Fujitsu that could give more information than credence?
Only from the inquiry, no. I wasn't aware.
Thank you. One final topic, and that is the ability to settle centrally. Can we look again at paragraph 31 of your witness statement, please? So that's WITN 06120100. And it's page 15, paragraph 31. You say that the change in 2005 by the Impact Programme was that the local suspense needs to be cleared at branch trading, creating a branch discrepancy with the option to the branch to declare the shortage/surplus as a branch discrepancy and settle centrally if over £150, or to make good cash or cheque for shortages or remove cash for surpluses. Local suspense does feed into the PulseApp accounts. And Now, I just want to take you to one final document while we have that in mind, and that's Poll 000026854. This is a transaction correction / debt recovery review. Is this something that you recall seeing or being involved in?
I can remember seeing it in the bundle.
But not before then?
I think I can vaguely remember this.
Under the section that's headed legal, it says, settle centrally signifies an acceptance of debt liability. Is that something that you were aware of, that actually if you settled centrally, it was considered to be an acceptance of debt liability?
I wasn't aware until legal raised it here. And what we did from this, we asked all our teams not to issue transaction corrections on a Tuesday prior to the branch trading. So they would have at least a full day to get them. So we didn't force acceptance as such on the same day as receipt.
So the answer to the problem caused by settling centrally, creating a debt liability, is to give people an extra day?
In some cases, yeah. I mean, that's not in all cases, but some of them may have received on the same day as branch trading. So we put steps in to ensure that they didn't receive TCs a day before branch trading.
Do you think that was sufficient for people who were experiencing, for example, discrepancies that they couldn't get to the bottom of?
I don't think the majority of TCs were issued on a Tuesday prior to branch trading. So we used to get a daily report to show what TCs we had issued. And sometimes branches would ask for them to be issued. So if they'd rung us up and it was a Tuesday, which normally we wouldn't issue on, then they'd ask us to issue them. So they'd got them for branch trading dates. But the numbers going out on a Tuesday were not as high as on other days of the week. A lot of the time, the bulk TCs were issued on a Thursday, Friday.
So am I right to understand that the answer to that problem was not to change the system so that it didn't create debt liability, but was to change the process by giving people an extra day in which to work out whether they needed to settle centrally or not?
At least another day, yeah. It wasn't that because the branches do their branch trading over 4 weeks, so in 4 different segments. So there's only so many completing a branch trading on week 1, then on week 2, week 3, and week 4. So there was different number of officers, branches, completing branch trading on different weeks.
Looking back at everything you know now and issues, for example, with bugs, errors and defects and the difficulty in getting to the bottom of all of that, do you think that the creation of a debt liability by settling centrally was appropriate?
I think in the majority of cases, yes, because I don't think that all the debt that we had was caused by bugs and defects.
So I'll rephrase that. In the case where a sub-postmaster was concerned that they were suffering from a software problem caused by a bug, error or defect, do you think it was fair to those individuals to create debt liability when they settled centrally?
I don't think even just settling centrally that it was a debt liability until we sent out the information to branches. So
do you accept the words written there that it signified an acceptance of debt liability?
I took what legal had said to us, yes, that it was signifying a debt liability.
Yeah. Thank you. So I don't have any questions. I believe Mr. Steen has some questions, and then Ms. Page.
Fine. Mr. Steen.
Thank you. Ms. Bolsover, I appear on behalf of a very large number of sub-postmasters and mistresses instructed by a solicitor's firm called Howe & Co. You've been asked a few questions about what's called the receipts and payments mismatch issue. Your evidence earlier on today was that you thought that you may have become aware of that at around 2013. So just help us with a little bit more detail, please. Now, first of all, your line manager within the FSC, was that Rod Ismay?
It was, yeah.
Right. And Andrew Wynne, who's described in your statement, paragraph 49, was the FSC relationship manager. What was he in terms of management responsibilities to you?
I was his line manager.
Right. So these two individuals, one of them is essentially your managerial boss, and the other one you manage. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the inquiry's heard evidence from both Mr. Wynne and Mr. Ismay. Mr. Wynne was involved in the latter part of 2010 in dealing with the receipts and payments mismatch bug. Okay? We know that from evidence that has been provided to the inquiry this year, and we know that from the documents. Now, Mr. Ismay gave evidence earlier this year on the 12th of May 23 that he thought that he became aware of that at the latest in early 2011. All right. So let's piece this all together. You've got these two individuals, one of them essentially working for you, the other one you report to, who are in the know about the mismatch and payment issue. Can we assume that you would have learnt about it at roughly the same time they did? In other words, latter part of 2010, early 2011?
Potentially, yes. And I think I may have got the date wrong.
No.
Because I wasn't wholly involved in it.
Yes. Right. Now, let's move on to step two in relation to the receipts and payments mismatch issue. Now, this particular bug that affected the Horizon system meant to a post office branch that they could not see that there was, from their accounts, an issue. But to the post office could see a shortfall, all right? So I've described this before as being effectively a submarine bug under the water for the branch, but affecting actually their accounts. Now, can we assume from, therefore, your evidence that you were aware that this was a devastating Horizon bug?
I think, yes, it was.
Yeah. So from that point onwards, it must have shaken your faith, indeed Mr. Ismay's and Mr. Wynne's faith in the Horizon system. Do you agree?
I think it's questioned why we weren't finding out about these issues.
Yes. And the reason why it would question about you finding out about these issues was because it meant that the Horizon system was completely capable of actually inventing a shortfall. Do you agree?
Yes.
Right. Now, you've just been asked a few questions by Mr. Blake, the barrister that was asking you questions this morning. And he was identifying with you the question of settling centrally. And you looked at with him at the last part of his questions to you a document where it was referred to. In other words, settling centrally means acceptance of debt liability. Okay. So let's add these two things together. You're aware that the mismatch bug can cause real problem with branch accounts. After that time, did the post office carry on using the settling centrally system to effectively make sub-postmasters and mistresses accept debt liability?
Yes, they did continue using it.
Didn't that give you any qualms, any concerns, Miss Bolsover, that what was going on here was a Horizon system that could create bugs, was nevertheless being applied by the post office, you included, to centrally settle with branch managers, that means that they accepted the debt. Didn't that give you any, concerns, sleepless nights, worries?
At the time, no, it didn't, because it was also a mechanism to enable postmasters to settle centrally and then pay off at the end of the month. So if they'd not got the cash to put in to the till, then they had an ability to defer their payment until the end of the month. So for a pluralist or somebody that was had got somebody else managing the branch, those officers were settling centrally on everything, all transaction corrections, all branch discrepancies, and then paying the bill at the end of the month.
Sub-postmasters, Miss Bolsover, that have been through the hell visited upon them by the post office may be rather concerned that you and other people within the FSE carried on blithely applying systems that penalised them in the knowledge that the Horizon system was not okay. Do you want to say anything to them?
I am sorry for how they've suffered. And I didn't know any of this prior or wasn't fully aware of all the issues that were raised.
I'm going to refer you to a document. It's POL 000-73012. So that's POL 000-73012. We can have that on screen, please. Now, if we can highlight, thank you very much, we can highlight the top part of the document and just look at the date. This is from Emily Springford, dated the 21st of September 2011. So this is after the period of time that we've identified that you became aware of the mismatch bug. Then we look through the bottom part of this, in the middle there, it says, thank you for the update, etc. My preliminary view is we should seek a confidential settlement, etc. And let's go a little bit further down to, now that's the top email. Right, thank you very much. So this is the email just before the top email, same date, 21st September 2011, 9:35. Dear Alison and Emily, please see below update from Joe Napier regarding a former agent of Leitrim Post Office. Leitrim, how do I say it? Leitrim. I'm very grateful. Leitrim is on our Horizon Integrity list. Now, could you help the inquiry understand what the Horizon Integrity list means?
It was whatever had been raised, either the Justice for Sub-Postmasters or Shoesmith's cases. I think it came onto that list after this date, it is my understanding.
Right. Now,
so I think it's been referred to the solicitors prior to us being updated that Leitrim was one that was claiming Horizon Integrity.
Right. Let's go a little bit further down the page and we'll deal with a matter that you answered a question about with Mr. Blake earlier on. Okay. So we're seeing the starting point email to this, and that's fine. If you leave it there, please. So again, same email chain, 21st September 2011. The time start time is 07:27. Now, we look at what's being said on this particular page. We go to, I think it's the 5th paragraph, where it says she pleads that she had problems with her Horizon system. Okay? Do you see that? Where yeah. The next to the yellow highlight.
Yes.
All right. So we know that this is a case whereby Miss McLerney was saying in relation to her dealings with the post office that this was a problem that she was having with the Horizon system. And it goes on to say the records support her contention that she did call the helpline from time to time. All right. So let's go back to the top. Let's go back to the top of where we've got these emails. That's it. Great. So let's add things up together again. We've got a system that by now, in 2011, you know could have a very grave fault to it. You've got this particular sub-postmaster, or mistress in fact, dealing with a problem that she's been wrestling with, contacting the confidential helpline, saying that there's difficulties with the system. Right. And what is going on here, as far as we can see, is that the drive by the post office is still to pursue her. Why not
Yes.
investigate this more deeply? Why not say to her, look, we've got some deep-rooted problems with the system. We just want to check to make sure yours is not one of them. Why is that not the reaction from the post office?
I don't know. I can't explain that. I think if you read further down the email, my understanding is from the audit report, there was different questions raised as well about how the branch was being managed and the chaotic state of the branch, I think it quoted in the audit report. So was it being managed correctly? With all due respect to the lady, I don't know. But that was the comments made within the audit report.
And you're suggesting that that might be a reasonable way of covering the problem when you've got direct knowledge that there are real problems with the post office Horizon system. You're saying, well,
No,
it could be that.
not.
It could be that this particular sub-post mistress is making the odd mistake, and that's fine, let's pursue her anyway.
Yes, but I think further down the email, there's a £4,100 cheque that went missing as well. So the cash was never there. So which would create a discrepancy.
Well, let's go to that. Let's go to the bottom of that page, please, that email.
Yeah.
Very grateful. Just further down, please. A little bit further. One more. That's it. Right. So this is the bottom paragraph there, where it says it's been suggested there's been no actual loss. Okay? And if we just highlight that particular paragraph, starting it's been suggested there'd be no actual. Thank you very much. Now, it goes on to say that cannot be correct in respect to the final audit, there being a real physical deficit on inspection. The 22/11/2006 loss of 1,628 has been identified as a cheque logged to the system which never arrived in the cash centre. Again, the loss accrual can be seen. The defendant had been credited for the value of the cheque, but Pol prevented from benefiting from it by being unable to cash it. Goes on to say in brackets, been suggested that Pol would have had the details of the payer-payee and could have followed up once the cheque was noted to be missing. So let's piece that together. This appears to be saying that the sub-postmistress, Miss McIlerney, had logged a cheque onto the system that had never arrived at the post office cash centre. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Why would she log a cheque onto the system that didn't exist?
I don't know, but sometimes that did happen
What's the point of doing that?
because there's no cash there.
Well, she's actually taking in a cheque, is she, and putting it onto a system. For what reason?
Because it's either cash or cheque as a method of payment or debit
This is
card.
a cheque being logged onto the system.
Yes. But
So
they
she's-
don't always exist.
I'm sorry? They don't always
The
exist.
No.
So you're suggesting
every
that she made this up?
I'm not, but I'm saying not in all cases that a cheque does exist.
Well,
So
she...
the postmaster may make his losses good by cheque, but never send the cheque off to the processing centre. And in which case we can't find as well transactions that relate to a cheque being taken for products.
So you're suggesting that one explanation for this is that Mrs. McIlerney had in fact put a cheque in herself for £1,628.56 in order to try and balance the system. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm saying that's what could have happened and does happen sometimes. I'm not saying in this case it's what happened, but it may have happened.
And then you're also suggesting that that cheque
but
never
then-
hit... Sorry, forgive me. You're talking and I'm talking. I shouldn't let that happen. You go ahead.
So a cheque is dispatched with it. If they've taken a bundle of cheques that day, week or whatever, they are dispatched daily into processing. they are all imaged, and the funds are then electronically transferred to Pol. So if a cheque has been classified as dispatched on Horizon and doesn't arrive, then it's understanding what transactions that cheque's been taken for.
Right.
So the comment that we'd got information on that cheque, it's not captured on Horizon, the cheque, only the value.
Right. And so are you explaining that that is the reason why, in these circumstances, that the Post Office would go after the sub-postmistress in relation to the sum claimed on the cheque?
Not only that, no. And I don't know why it wasn't put on hold as a potential Horizon case, and it was passed to Joe later in, Joe Napier, sorry.
No.
I don't know why.
Because let's remind ourselves what in fact did happen. Was it instead she was pursued for the debt?
Yes.
Let's turn to an email chain that relates to Mr. Scott Darlington. POL 000 57991. Thank you. Now, you've again looked at this briefly with the barrister that asked you questions earlier. This was emails to Angela van de Bogaard, who's at that time head of network services. All right? And let's go down to the next part of that page, please. Right, thank you. It says, and this is from you to Ms. van de Bogaard, Angela, Scott Darlington, Alderney Edge, debt outstanding 44,193. This is one of our top 5 cases. Now, again, you've been asked some questions about that. So let's go scroll down a little bit more and we'll see a discussion about the types of cases that we're talking about. Again, further down. Right, I'm grateful. Stop there, please. So the information that's being passed onwards within this email chain is that from Chris Darville. Who is Chris Darville? Can you help?
He was an internal solicitor, I believe.
Okay. Sent in May of 2012 to Ms. van der Bogaard. Angela, I've compared the list of branches against the known cases being fronted by shoesmiths. 3 of the 5 cases formally notified to Pol fall within the constituencies of one of the 37 MPs due to attend the meeting. Okay. Let's deal with the shoesmiths part. Why does it matter that it's part of a group of cases being fronted by shoesmiths?
I don't know, because Chris wrote that. I don't know.
All right. Why does it matter that 3 out of the 5 cases formally notified to Pol fall within the constituencies of one of the 37 MPs due to attend the meeting? The particular constituency MP we're concerned with here for Mr. Darlington was George Osborne.
I can't answer that. I wasn't involved in the MPs raising issues.
But there appears... Sorry, you go ahead.
We were the recipients of information to say, put this case on hold, not on the background of what was happening with various MPs or anything else. As such, it's we're processing information. We weren't dealing with the MP's visits.
Right, well, let's scroll further down the page and see what else would have been on the email chain that you were part of. Scott Darlington, first of all. Now, various bullet points there. And you'll see there that on to the 6th bullet point in relation to Mr. Darlington, it's alleged that training provided was inadequate. The helpline provided by Pol was unfairly difficult to access due to hours of operation, insufficiency of operators to deal with the level of demand. The Horizon system suffers with inherent defects and or an unfair system of operation. The standard operating procedures used by Pol make it impossible to properly reconcile errors. So that's what's being said there in relation to a summary of Mr. Darlington's issues. Just go further down and we'll see Julian Wilson. And you'll see there the 5th bullet point, letter before action sent by Shoesmiths on 23rd of August 2011. The issues raised in that letter are more or less identical to those set out in Darlington. And then further down, where we have in the little dotted line box GRO,
Yeah.
we'll see that the GRO has been substituted for an individual's name. Again, could you just scroll down a little bit further, please? Julie, thank you very much. And we see the second to last bullet point, reference to court proceedings being commenced in June 2011, and then the final sentence there, the allegations made are in almost identical terms to the claims made in both the Darlington and Wilson cases. So can we, again, pull this all together? These are all cases where identical concerns are being raised about the system having many problems, defects in training, access to helplines, defects in the system, etc. Why were these 3 cases being picked on by the post office?
I don't necessarily think they were being picked on. I think if reading this again now, both of the 2 that you've said, excluding this one that was a spent debt at that point anyway, they were both they were both security cases that were criminal prosecutions that wouldn't have necessarily gone through my teams, these 2. So we wouldn't have proceeded with civil requests until the security had ended their prosecution as such.
Ms. Bolsover, by this time in 2012, what was going on was that considerable concerns had been raised about Horizon. MPs are being involved. Shoesmiths are bringing the cases together. The JFSA is involved in the background. Computer Weekly is publishing issues that relate to it. These cases needed to be stamped out, didn't they? You needed to make good on these claims and pursue them. Do you agree?
I don't think we did pursue them. But there were initially not just debts that were put onto the customer account, they were sent to the security teams. I don't disagree with you.
Ms. Bolsover, the individuals I've been asking you some questions about, Ms. McMulleney, Mr. Darlington, their families are in this room where I sit at the inquiry centre for the post office inquiry. Something you'd like to say to them?
I'm just very sorry for what they've been through. Potentially, I didn't believe that there was a problem with Horizon. Subsequently, I'm shocked about how things were not identified or not investigated properly. That I can only say sorry.
So no further questions.
Mr. Blake, did you say that there was another
Miss
person?
Page.
Ah, yes, right.
Ms. Bolsover, I'm asking questions also on behalf of a group of sub-postmasters, and the first short area of questioning I want to ask about is the non-commercial pursuit of debts. And there's a document that I'll show to you that deals with that. So if we could have poll 2012-1191, please. If we zoom in at the top there, the heading says Proposal for Transfer of Write-Off Authority for Former Sub-Postmaster Accounts Cases. And then it sets out the years that we're talking about. So we're talking about 2002 going into 2003. And it says from commercial and community finance managers to transaction processing. So this seems to be a change of process about write-off. Is that right?
Yes, because I believe the former agents' accounts were out before 2005. They sat out in the network, and then they were transferred in when the impact programme happened.
Yes, and in that first paragraph, what we see is the current process means that cases over £500 are documented and sent to the commercial and community finance managers. So that means out in the network, yes?
Yes.
This is a fairly simple process, but recently we have received a number of queries regarding the cases insisting that we continue investigations, even though we have been advised by legal services that it would not be cost effective to do so. So what we see there is a suggestion that it is out in the network that there was a desire sometimes to pursue cases when it wasn't economically sensible to do so on legal services viewpoint.
That's what I understand. I received this last night.
It does say in the third paragraph that you attended a meeting, but perhaps you don't remember that. It says you attended a meeting with Tony Marsh and Phil Gerrish to discuss accountabilities.
Yeah, and I'm imagining this was probably when I'd just taken over the debt recovery role.
But you have no particular memory of it?
Not really, no.
Well, you may not be able to answer the question I was going to ask then, which was really why do you think it was that finance managers out in the network wanted legal action to take place even when it wasn't economical to do so?
And that's, I can't answer that, I'm sorry. I think they didn't accept that we couldn't collect the debt that was sat originally within their accounts. And if we couldn't trace a former sub-postmaster, then we couldn't take any further steps. And I think it was pointing that out to Tony that, you know, we were being asked to do the impossible because we couldn't pursue them. But I don't know why commercial and community finance managers believed we could.
All right. Well, that can come down. Thank you. I'll move on then to a bigger issue for you. You've described how your teams had to match and reconcile data from Horizon branch accounts with Pol's clients, yes, like the banks and National Lottery and so forth.
Yeah.
What I'd like to go to is the findings of Detica about these processes in 2013. So that's document Pol 302-9677, please. So we see from this front page what they were asked to look at, fraud and non-conformance in the post office. And if you've watched previous hearings, you might have seen this document before. What I'd like to do, please, is go to page 20 and scroll down to paragraph 4.3.2. This is dealing particularly with the reconciliation of ATM data, and then I'll go over the page where it talks about reconciling cash data. So this says ATM withdrawal data is collected by Wincor, manually manipulated and provided to the post office, where it is merged in PulseApp to cross-check submitted 1630. Now, just pausing there, does that mean that the cross-check is that the postmasters had to submit information from the cash point at 4:30 each day? Is that right?
I believe so. Back in 2013, I didn't manage the ATM data, but I subsequently did. And they pulled a report out of the system, is my understanding, out of the ATM that gave their 1630 withdrawal figures.
It goes on, this information should be supplied as an automated feed and made available beyond just the Financial Services Centre, whose responsibility it is to account for ATM payments and settle with Bank of Ireland rather than detect error. And it goes on at the bottom there to say, additionally, this is the final sentence, additionally, a direct data feed would negate the need to cross-check data and for branch staff to manually obtain and input this data on a daily basis. If we go over to 4.3.3, similar points are made with regard to cash. It says Currently, declared figures entered by branch staff are used as the basis for cash dispatch. This information has to be extracted daily from Horizon, as it only stores the last entry. And it says currently the process relies on manual intervention. Given the value to the post office in identifying discrepancies within branches, it should be automatically stored as an historical record and made more widely available. There's conclusions from this, which I'll just go to as well before we have some thoughts and questions about this. So if we go down to page 21, 4.3.3, sorry, page 37, 7.2.2. And scroll down a little. The heading there, complex and fragmented systems. Post office systems are not fit for purpose in a modern retail and financial environment. Our primary concern here relates to difficulty in reconciling information from multiple transaction systems, both in terms of timeliness, structure, and access. It deals with various examples, and if we go over to the top of page 38, the conclusion is this. Failure on this scale indicates that there is a fundamental issue with the process or controls in place around cash balancing. As if to underline the point, a key risk indicator, recognised by both the fraud analysis team and the pilot, is that of a branch that is too good at matching these numbers, rather than branches that balance perfectly every time being seen as, quotes, good, this is seen as an indicator of branches that are, quotes, bad, with several cases of perfectly balancing branches found to be fraudulent. So there's some pretty strong words there. That document can come down. In essence, what Detica was saying in 2013 was that the way that Polsap reconciled data from Horizon and from the various other systems was not fit for purpose, and that it was causing significant difficulties. Were those findings shared with you when you took on the role that you've said you took on subsequent to this?
No, the fraud and non-conformance team moved from product and branch accounting or transaction processing into security. So I believe the Detica report was sent to security.
And not to you?
In 2013. No, I'd not seen that report.
And so
I don't know what the outcomes from that or what improvements were offered after that report. I can vaguely remember we started using a system called Horace, where you could see more detailed transaction levels, but there was only limited license to that. By only a few across the business, maybe 50 licenses.
Was there ever any... Sorry.
I don't know what Sally did with the Detica report, or if anything, a project came out of that. I don't know.
On your side of things, though, was there ever any attempt to automate so that there was no longer the need for these manual reconciliations?
Yes.
And
so,
was that the PING project?
The PING project for lottery, PING for pay station. Prior to me leaving, there was talk of ATMs, the data being pinged as such, but then another project being ran as I left in 2021 for changes to ATM reporting and how branches would report. And I think it was always a concern when branches had kit that wasn't attached to Horizon, it was then down to manual input, which in every scenario, human error can happen. So I think we were trying to tie the kit up for various products.
All right. Well, prior to the tying up, as it were, can you just help with a bit of process around what Detica called these complex and fragmented systems? Was your department carrying out daily reconciliation of what was going on with the Horizon feeds and what was going on with the client feeds?
Yes, for certain products. So some selling a stamp would not be a matched product, but it would need to be fed and it would go into another area, not my area, to be paid to Royal Mail. Bill payments went straight through to pay BT or whatever bill provider. So the information from Horizon went straight into vendors to pay our clients, but there was no matching. So no matching routines taking place from anywhere else. So there was no client data. It all fed from Horizon.
Did the clients like BT or whatever not provide you with a data stream then?
No. Not for bill payments, no.
What about banks?
No.
No?
We supplied it to them.
Right.
So we took the payment and it was paid to which bank A, B or C, whichever bank it was paid to, or withdraw. You know, it was either a deposit or a withdrawal from a bank. But the information went directly into SAP, into a vendor to either pay or receive money from the clients.
So unless the branch raised an issue, it was always assumed, was it, that that data going to the client was correct?
Yes.
Or presumably if a client raised an issue?
Yes. A client could raise an issue back to us, so a customer could say, this is not correct. So when we take bill payments in a branch, or whatever bill, the record is there in branch. That sends a value information into Polsat to pay the client, but the client also gets a data file to update their records to say this bill has been paid or this bill's credited through the banking system. Right.
And so if a client said that there was something wrong about that, they would raise it?
Yes.
And
so
if
we get bank enquiries, yes.
And if there was a query raised by a client, was it assumed that they were correct or what?
We would investigate it with the branch. So we would ask them about the transaction or what the customer claimed. So although there was bank inward enquiries coming in, we were pushing a lot out to banks where postmasters had keyed the wrong amount. So if they'd keyed, if they'd had a deposit for £200 and they'd keyed 2,000, we had to. They raised it with the MBSC, and we contacted the banks. But it had to be the customer giving authority to the banks to deduct that amount. And a lot of the time, the customers come back and say, no, I did put £2,000 in.
All right, so you've got information sources coming from the branch, from the customer and from the client, yes?
Yeah.
If there was a dispute, though, and the client refused, let's say in the case of a shortfall, if the client refused to accept that they had something wrong and that any money was owing from them, then it would fall to the postmaster, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
All right. Because
I think
they would...
changes really late in the last year or so that I was there were changes made to that and the processes around it to allow the credits to be given.
All right. But for most of the period we're dealing with, unless the client agreed that they had got it wrong or the customer agreed that they had got it wrong, there would be no credit transaction correction issued, would there?
No, because we'd got no money to pay them back with.
All right, well, just focusing on that for a moment, because we now know that sometimes Horizon created fictitious shortfalls. So you would have potential for the situation to develop where Horizon had got it wrong. The client was right in saying, no, we don't owe you any money. And nevertheless, it would fall to the sub-postmaster to pay this fictitious shortfall. Yes?
Can you just put that to me again? I'm sorry.
All right, so let's imagine a situation where the Horizon data is wrong. It's created a fictitious shortfall.
Yeah.
Yeah? And so when there's then the investigation and you've spoken to the client and the client says, no, no, we don't owe you anything. And the customer likewise, if they've been able to be got hold of, they say, we don't owe you anything. That fictitious shortfall is still going to be paid by the sub-postmaster. Yeah?
I think I would agree in some respects, but on the other, if it was a transaction that was put into Horizon as a bill payment, then that's what the client's receiving. The information that.
But let's say it's a bank situation where there's a deposit, and Horizon has in fact created a deposit sum which really didn't exist.
Then it wouldn't have a customer number to attach any and give to the client.
Well,
Ms. Page, I, as you know, have been very tolerant of hypothetical situations and scenarios, but I think we're going a bit too far now.
well, what I'd like to get to, if I may, sir, is what went on with client suspense accounts, because there were sometimes millions held in client suspense accounts, weren't there?
No. I don't know if you can broaden out on what a client suspense account was.
Well, as I understand it, each post office client had a suspense account where there was sums held if there were disputes over those. You say that didn't exist? Well, maybe that's not something you can answer questions about then.
Not to best of my knowledge, no. There wasn't client suspense accounts. Sorry, no, I disagree. Sorry, I'll disagree with myself. There was an account if we had a cheque processed with a credit, so we knew that I had paid or a cheque had been cleared in my name, but the postmaster had not stamped the back of the cheque or done anything to identify it was their branch, then we put it into a suspense account awaiting a customer to come back to us to marry that position up. But we wouldn't hold, we only held them if we couldn't allocate them to branch or to a client or whatever.
Were you
So
anything to do with what happened at the end of whatever period they were managed under? Were you anything to do with what happened to sums held in client suspense accounts?
No, but there's still suspense accounts now.
For sure. But my question is, did you have anything to do with the process or management of what happened with sums held in client suspense accounts?
Not particularly, no.
No.
I think I'd have to really home in on what we meant by, I think your definition of a client suspense might be different to mine.
Well, it rather sounds like I'm not going to be able to get any further with what I was going to ask about.
Yeah.
All right, because you're saying that you're not aware of large sums being held in those accounts.
I don't believe so, no.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Is that it, Mr. Blake?
Yes, it is, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Bolsover, for coming to give evidence, and before that, for making a detailed witness statement. I'm grateful to you. I think we have one witness tomorrow, Mr. Blake?
Yes, 10 o'clock tomorrow. Yes.
And can I just say to the co-participants who made a special effort to come to the hearing today, that notwithstanding that the evidence was given remotely, I hope they have found the session informative and constructive. Thank you.